He only knew that the coat was too thin for the weather. He only knew that the old man had been standing at that bus stop for a very long time. Gordon Merritt did not think about it the way a person thinks about a decision. He did not weigh the inconvenience or consider whether the stranger would welcome the gesture. He simply shrugged off his jacket, a worn gray thing, the lining fraying at the left cuff, and held it out. "Here," he said, "take it." The old man looked at him the way people look at something they do not quite trust. Rain was coming down in a fine, steady mist, the kind that does not announce itself but soaks through everything before you realize it has. The old man's shoulders were dark with it. His collar was turned up as high as it would go, which was not very high at all. "I'm all right," the old man said. "You're not," Gordon said. "Neither am I, but one of us is wetter than the other." The old man looked at him for another moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the jacket. His name was Roland Fitch. Gordon did not know this yet. He did not know that Roland Fitch had spent 41 years building a private equity firm that bore his name, that he had shaken hands with senators and sat across negotiating tables from men who thought they were the most powerful people in the room, that the quiet authority in his voice when he finally said, "Thank you," was the same voice that had once talked a failing textile company back from the edge of bankruptcy over the course of a single afternoon. Gordon did not know any of this. He only knew that the man was old and cold, and that the jacket fit him poorly across the shoulders, hanging loose in a way that made him look, for just a moment, like a boy wearing his father's clothes. They stood together under the aluminum shelter. The bus was late. It was always late on this stretch of Clement Street, especially in November, especially when the rain came in from the bay low and gray and without apology. "You live around here?" Roland asked. "Used to," Gordon said. "My mother did. I was cleaning out her apartment." He gestured vaguely toward the building at the end of the block, a 4-story walk-up with a laundromat on the ground floor. The light in the laundromat window was the only warm color on the street. "I'm sorry," Roland said. "It's been a few months," Gordon said. "I kept putting it off." He had put it off for 4 months and 11 days, to be precise. The boxes were still only half filled. He had managed the kitchen and most of the bedroom, but the closet was still untouched, and inside the closet was a shoebox on the top shelf that he knew contained letters and photographs, and he had not been ready to open it. He was not sure he was ready now, and had somehow ended up at the bus stop without any coffee and without a very clear sense of what he intended to do next. Roland did not ask any more questions. This, Gordon would think later, was the first thing that struck him as unusual. Most people, when you told them something like that, felt compelled to fill the silence. They said things like, "At least she's not suffering," or "These things take time." Roland said nothing. He simply stood with Gordon's jacket over his shoulders and watched the rain. "Where are you headed?" Gordon asked after a while. "Nowhere particular," Roland said. "I walk this route most mornings. Doctor told me to walk. Knees don't agree, but I walk anyway. And the bus? I ride back. Walking one direction feels like progress. Walking both directions feels like stubbornness." Gordon almost smiled. It was the first time anything had made him want to in 4 months and 11 days. The bus came. It was the 38 Geary, running 12 minutes behind schedule. Roland climbed the steps slowly, one hand on the rail, and Gordon followed without quite deciding to. He told himself it was because the man still had his jacket. He told himself he would get the jacket back and then get off at the next stop. He did not get off at the next stop. They sat in the seats behind the driver, the ones that faced sideways, and Roland set Gordon's jacket on his knee and looked out at the street as it scrolled past. Chinatown gave way to the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin gave way to Civic Center. An old woman boarded with a cart full of groceries, and Roland stood up, without hesitation, and offered her his seat. She took it without acknowledging him, which did not seem to bother Roland at all. He held the overhead bar and rode the rest of the way standing, with Gordon's jacket folded over one arm, perfectly balanced, as if he had ridden city buses standing up his entire life. "You don't have to stand," Gordon said. "I stood on a trading floor for 20 years before the knees went," Roland said. "I think I can manage a bus." Gordon looked at him. "Trading floor?" "A long time ago," Roland said. "Before other things." He did not say what the other things were. Gordon did not ask. They got off at Van Ness because Roland said there was a diner there that made biscuits the right way, which he defined as heavy and plain, without herbs or cheese or any of the other additions that he felt were signs of a civilization losing its confidence. Gordon had not eaten since the night before. He had not noticed until Roland mentioned biscuits. The diner was called Haps, and it looked exactly like it sounded. Red vinyl booths, a counter with swivel stools, a chalkboard with the specials written in a hand that suggested the person who wrote it had not fully committed to legibility. A woman named Bet, according to her name tag, brought them coffee before they asked for it and refilled Gordon's cup before it was empty, which he appreciated more than he could reasonably explain. Roland ordered biscuits and eggs. Gordon ordered the same. "What is it you do?" Roland asked. "I'm a contractor," Gordon said. "General contracting. Commercial mostly. I did residential for a while, but..." He stopped. "It's complicated. Most things are," Roland said. "When the real answer is that you used to do something and now you're not sure what you're doing." Gordon set down his coffee cup. He looked at the old man across the table. Roland was watching him with the particular attention of someone who has learned to listen by spending decades in rooms where listening was the only thing that mattered. "My business partner and I had a disagreement," Gordon said. "About 2 years ago. It became a legal matter. The legal matter is resolved, but the business isn't really. It's technically still operating, but I haven't taken a job in 8 months." He had not told anyone this. Not his sister, not the 2 friends from high school he still saw occasionally for dinner. He had told his accountant, because his accountant needed to know, but he had told his accountant in the careful language of financial disclosure, not in the plain language of a man who was lost. 8 months is a long time to be still," Roland said. "I know. Do you know why?" Gordon looked out the window. Outside, a delivery truck was idling at the curb. The driver was on his phone. "I think I'm not sure the disagreement was wrong," Gordon said. "My partner's disagreement, I mean, about how we were running things. I think he might have been right, and I might have been wrong, and I don't know what to do with that." He had not said this before either. The words felt strange coming out, like something that had been stored in a cabinet for too long and had changed shape. Roland picked up a biscuit and broke it in half with both hands, neatly, the way you break something when you've broken a great many similar things over a great many years. "There's a particular kind of stillness," he said, "that comes from not wanting to move forward because moving forward means accepting that you made a mistake. I've been in that stillness, more than once." "What did you do?" "The first time, I waited until external circumstances forced me to move, and I lost 18 months and a great deal of money." He spread butter on one half of the biscuit. "The second time, I moved before I felt ready and discovered that readiness is mostly a story we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort." "That sounds like advice," Gordon said. "It sounds like a memory," Roland said. "Whether it's advice is up to you." They ate without talking for a while. The diner had that particular morning quality that diners have. Unhurried, a little warm, smelling of coffee and bacon grease and the faint specific scent of a gas range that has been burning for years. A man at the counter was doing a crossword. 2 women in the corner booth were talking with the ease of people who've known each other long enough to not need to fill every second. Gordon thought about his mother's closet. He thought about the shoebox on the top shelf. He thought about his mother's handwriting on the labels of things, the way she wrote in careful block letters that were not quite print and not quite cursive, as if she had invented her own alphabet somewhere between the two. "She was a nurse," he said, without planning to. "My mother. For 32 years. Same hospital." "What kind of nurse?" Roland asked. "She worked with sick kids." He paused. "She never talked about it much. She didn't bring it home. But I remember once, when I was maybe 9 or 10, she came home and sat in the kitchen for a long time without doing anything. Just sat there. And I asked her what was wrong, and she said, 'Nothing's wrong.' And I knew that wasn't true, but I didn't know what to do with that. So I just sat down at the table with her, and we sat there together for maybe half an hour. Neither of us said anything." He had not thought about that in years. He was not sure why he was thinking about it now. "She sounds like someone who carried things quietly." Roland said. "She was," Gordon said. "I don't know where she put it all. I've been trying to figure that out since she died." Roland looked at him for a moment, not with pity, which Gordon had been getting a great deal of and had come to find nearly unbearable, with something closer to recognition. "I lost my wife 11 years ago," Roland said. "Eleanor. She was a school librarian for 30 years. She knew every child in that district by name, and she remembered, years later, which books they had loved. She got letters. After she retired, after she was gone, letters from people who were grown adults, talking about a book she had handed them when they were 8 years old." He stopped. "I keep one of those letters in my coat pocket. I've been meaning to put it somewhere proper for 11 years. Gordon looked at the old man's coat. It was a good coat, wool, the kind that lasts for decades if you take care of it. He imagined a folded letter in the inside pocket, soft from years of refolding. "You carry it with you," Gordon said. "It reminds me," Roland said, "that the things that matter most are usually invisible to the person doing them." Eleanor never knew she changed those children's lives. She just handed them books. They ordered more coffee. The morning stretched out around them, unhurried. Roland paid for the meal before Gordon could reach for his wallet. Gordon started to object, and Roland raised one hand with the quiet authority of someone who had stopped discussions with the same gesture for 50 years. "You gave me a jacket in the rain," Roland said. "That's how it works." "That's not really how it works," Gordon said. "It's how it should work," Roland said, "which is close enough." Outside, the rain had stopped. The street was wet and clean-looking, the way San Francisco streets look after rain, every surface reflecting the sky. They walked together for a block without deciding to, moving in the same direction at the same pace, which felt natural in a way that Gordon could not entirely account for. At the corner of Van Ness and Sacramento, Roland stopped. "I'm this way," he said, indicating north. "I'm that way," Gordon said, indicating the direction of his mother's apartment. Roland held out Gordon's jacket. Gordon took it. "The closet," Roland said. "Open the shoebox." Gordon stared at him. "I didn't say anything about a shoebox. You said there was a shoebox," Roland said. "On the top shelf." Gordon thought back. He had said that. He had said it without realizing he was saying it, the way you say things sometimes when you are talking to a person who listens in a particular way. "What if I'm not ready?" Gordon said. "You've been ready for 4 months and 11 days, Roland said. "You just didn't know it." He turned and walked north. Gordon watched him go. The good wool coat, the careful pace, the slight stiffness in the knees that did not slow him down so much as, mind you, watching, that something continued in spite of itself. Gordon turned south and walked back toward his mother's apartment. The elevator in the building had been broken for 2 weeks. He climbed the 4 flights the way he always did, counting the steps the way his mother had taught him to count things when he was small and anxious. And the world seemed large and unpredictable. 14 steps per flight, 56 steps total. He had counted them as a child, and he counted them now. The apartment was as he had left it, half-filled boxes. The smell of his mother's soap, still faintly present, although it was getting harder to find. He had read somewhere that smell was the last thing to go. He went to the closet. The shoebox was on the top shelf where it had always been, pushed back against the wall. He had to stand on his toes to reach it. It was heavier than he expected. He carried it to the kitchen table and set it down and stood looking at it for a long moment. Then he opened it. Inside, a bundle of letters tied with kitchen twine, the kind his mother kept in the drawer next to the stove. A stack of photographs, rubber-banded, some of them old enough that the colors had shifted toward orange and brown. A small notebook with a marbled cover. A child's drawing on construction paper, folded in quarters. He unfolded the drawing first. It was a house, drawn in crayon, green, grass, yellow sun, a chimney with curlicue smoke. In the corner, in a child's printing, "For Nurse Carol, who made me feel better." From Denny, age 7. He sat down at the kitchen table. He went through the letters slowly. There were 23 of them, spanning 4 decades. They were from parents, mostly. Some from the children themselves, written years later as adults. They thanked his mother for things she had done that she had never mentioned. Staying past the end of her shift, bringing a book from home, remembering a child's birthday. One letter was from a woman who had been a patient at age 4, and was now a pediatric nurse herself. She wrote that she had chosen her profession because of a woman named Carol who had held her hand during a procedure when she was too frightened to let her mother do it. She wrote, "I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you." Gordon read every letter. He did not know how long he sat there. The light in the apartment changed, the afternoon coming in through the west-facing window the way it always did in November, low and amber and remarkably gentle for a city that could be hard in other ways. His mother had carried all of this quietly. She had not told him. She had not told anyone, as far as he could tell. She had simply kept doing the thing, year after year, and the evidence had accumulated in a shoebox. And the shoebox had sat on the top shelf of the closet until the day he finally climbed on his toes and reached for it. He thought about what Roland had said. The things that matter most are usually invisible to the person doing them. He thought about his contracting business. He thought about the 8 months of stillness. He thought about his business partner, whose disagreement he had at some point quietly decided was correct. And he thought about the phone call he had been meaning to make and had not made. He made it. His former partner, a man named Dennis Huang, answered on the 3rd ring. There was a silence on the line, the particular silence of someone who did not expect the call and is trying to figure out what it means. "I've been thinking," Gordon said. "I know," Dennis said. "You were right about the Kellerman project." Gordon said, "You were right about most of it." Another silence, shorter this time. "I know that too," Dennis said. "But thank you for saying it." They talked for an hour. Not about business, mostly, about the time in between. What each of them had been doing. The small adjustments a person makes when a large part of their life becomes suddenly unavailable. Dennis had taken on some smaller jobs through a friend's firm. He had learned to make bread, which he described as a project in failure management. He asked about Gordon's mother. and Gordon told him, briefly, about the shoebox, about the letters, about the drawing from Denny, age 7. "That's the whole thing, isn't it?" Dennis said. "Right there. I'm starting to think so," Gordon said. They agreed to talk again the following week. No commitments yet, no plans. Just the acknowledgement that there was a conversation worth continuing. Gordon hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen of his mother's apartment for a while longer. The amber light was fading. The street outside was quieting into evening. Somewhere in the building, someone was cooking something with garlic and onion, and the smells came through the gaps around the window frame and mixed with the fading smell of his mother's soap, and for a moment the apartment felt less like a place from which someone was absent and more like a place where something still remained. He closed the shoebox carefully. He set it aside from the boxes marked for donation, aside from the boxes marked for storage. He set it on the counter by itself, where he would not forget it, where it would come home with him. The next morning he looked up Roland Fitch. He had not given the name much thought at the time, but it stayed with him the way certain things do, and when he typed it into a search engine, on a quiet Tuesday morning with coffee going on the stove, the results came back immediately and in volume. Roland Fitch, founder and chairman emeritus of Fitch Capital Partners. Estimated net worth, various sources, various years, in the range that made Gordon set down his coffee mug. Philanthropist, quiet donor to children's hospitals across the Bay Area, the kind of donor whose name appears on buildings but who does not give interviews about it. His wife, Eleanor Fitch, had been a school librarian. The obituary described her as beloved. Gordon sat with this for a long time. He thought about a man in a thin coat standing at a bus stop in the rain. He thought about the way Roland had stood on the bus without complaint. One hand on the bar, perfectly balanced. He thought about the biscuits at Hap's diner and the butter knife, and the particular way Roland had broken the biscuit in half, as if he had broken a great many similar things and found the process straightforward. He thought about the letter in the inside pocket of the wool coat, folded soft from years of refolding. He did not try to contact Roland Fitch. He considered it, and then he decided that some things were complete in themselves, and that this was one of them. A morning, a bus, a diner, a conversation that had not been planned by either of them, and that had moved in the direction it needed to move. He went back to his mother's apartment 3 more times that week, and finished the work. He opened the closet. He went through everything carefully, the way his mother had gone through everything carefully, which he understood now was not just a habit but a form of attention. A way of saying that things mattered enough to be considered one at a time. He packed the shoebox last. He started making calls about the business the following Monday, not all at once, and not with a plan that was finished in every particular. He called Dennis first, and then he called 2 former clients he trusted, and then he called a younger contractor he had mentored years ago, who had since started her own operation, and who he thought might be interested in a partnership of a different kind than the one he'd had before. It was slow. It was not a story with clean chapters. There were weeks that were better than others, and weeks that were not, and the legal matter left residue that took a long time to clear. But he moved. That was the thing. He moved before he felt entirely ready, the way Roland had described, and he found that readiness, in fact, was something that arrived after movement rather than before it. He thought about his mother's letters. He thought about what it meant to do something year after year without keeping score, to let the evidence accumulate in a shoebox that someone else would have to open. He thought about a child who was 7 years old and frightened, and a nurse who held his hand when no one else could reach him. He thought about a jacket, thin and gray, handed to a stranger in the rain. There is a kind of accounting that does not appear in any ledger. It does not appear in portfolios or case files or the records of legal proceedings. It shows up instead in shoeboxes on high shelves, in letters folded small enough to carry in a coat pocket, in the particular steadiness of a man standing on a moving bus with one hand on a bar and his eyes on the street rolling past. The city keeps going. The 38 Geary runs its route every morning, late and crowded and entirely indifferent to the conversations that happen inside it. Hap's Diner serves biscuits the right way, heavy and plain, without embellishment. The building on Clement Street still has a broken elevator, or it did for a while, and people climb the 14 steps per flight and count them or don't, depending on who they are. Gordon Merritt carries his mother's shoebox on a shelf in his own apartment now, in a city that is hard in some ways and, in others, remarkably gentle. He has not opened it again. He does not need to. He knows what is inside, and he knows what it means, and knowing is enough to carry forward. That is all any of it ever asked of him. To carry it forward, to move,